Good morning, I'm Nicola Rea and I'm going to present to you about Martin Luther. Throughout the past few presentations, about 90% of you have mentioned the fact that the Renaissance is an age where the social classes are very marked. However, I find it very ironic that yet none of you have mentioned the fact that the Renaissance is an age of learning, an age of faith, an age of discovery, an age where people started learning that what they used to believe in is not exactly true. That's why today I'm going to talk to you about Martin Luther, who despite the fact that he was from a very low social class, he was able to become a great leader and become the man nobody would have expected him to become. He became the man who took the great Catholic Church down. Now I'm going to give you some general information about this great leader. He was born on 1483 in the country of Germany. At first, he wanted to become a lawyer, and he was going through that path. However, at the age of 21, he was caught in a storm where his destiny was to be struck by lightning. While he was in the storm, he thought the only thing he could do was pray. So he started praying to Saint Anne, who he later offered to become an Augustinian monk if he was able to survive the storm. And he was actually able to survive the storm. So guess what? Later in his life, he became an Augustinian monk. And while being an Augustinian monk, he later concluded that the only way to reach salvation or to go to heaven was throughout faith. Okay. What made Martin very special and very different from other people were his 95 theses. After realizing that the church was collecting money by the selling of indulgences, he wrote these 95 theses about the Catholic Church. In those 95 theses about the Catholic Church, they're not very good for the Catholic Church, since in those theses he mentioned a lot of the church's hidden stories. He also mentioned the fact that the church was practicing simony and also the corruption of many of the leaders of the church. He also mentioned that the fact that the church was practicing acts that are not mentioned in the Bible, and that gave people the thought that the church was talking about their opinions instead of what the statements on the Bible said. Later on, those 95 theses were pasted on the front door of a cathedral in central Germany. And thanks to the printing press, those 95 theses were later sent to a lot of people, so the church started losing a lot of power. Many would argue that the Renaissance affected Luther more than Luther affected the Renaissance. Since, of course, the practice of humanism and secularism sure helped Luther in a lot of ways. Also, the key to Luther's success was the printing press. Since throughout the printing press, people not only had more access to the Bible, but also his work was spreading a lot quicker. Another thing of the time that helped Luther a lot were that at the time the church was a great economic power, and kings and queens were very jealous of its power and wealth, so they would go to Luther's side instead of the church's side. Also, merchants refused to pay taxes, and remember that in that time merchants were very wealthy, so they also helped Luther rebel against the church. After a while of glory, Luther received a letter from Pope Leo. The letter said that if he didn't take a public stand and said that all the 95 theses he said were not true and that he regrets them, he would excommunicate him. But instead of doing that, Luther did what he thought was best, and he took a public stand where he burned Pope Leo's letter. And that, guess what, only brought him a way more popularity, since people said, if he that's from the same social class that I am can stand up like that to the church, why can't I? So people started looking at Luther like an example and started following him a lot. After a while, Charles V took Luther to trial, since he did not like the way he respected the church. And of course he lost the trial because all the trial members were on Charles V's side. So Charles V outlawed him and told all German citizens that they should not provide them with any shelter, or any other resources he needed to live. However, that law was never followed, since even Prince Frederick the Wise took him into his home and held him and gave him shelter, food, and all the resources he needed to live for 1 year while he translated the Bible to German. Martin Luther King might have not been the first to try, but he definitely was the first to succeed in the taking down of the Catholic Church. Other people who tried to take the Catholic Church down and Martin Luther really followed their steps were John Wycliffe, Jan Hus, Desiderius Erasmus, and Thomas More. In conclusion, if there's something I have learned of this great leader, it's that everything is possible. And the most important thing in life is to go and fight for what you believe in, since despite everything, it's the most important thing. So I encourage you to take Martin as an example and try to live the same way he did. Since fighting for what you believe in is very important. Thank you.
Bueno.